Thank you very much for having us, Alice. So I'm Jacob, and I work with Guildford Opera. So I don't know if people are aware that Guildford has its own opera company. Alice and I were just chatting a moment ago before everyone joined, and she, like a lot of people, didn't know that Guildford Opera Company was a thing. But we are here, and we're recruiting for volunteers. It's quite an exciting time for us as a charity because we're starting to kind of expand our reach more into the local community. So yeah, really pleased to be here and to be able to tell you a little bit about us and the volunteer roles that we're developing and recruiting for. So we are also known, so we're sort of known as Guildford Opera and also Guildford Opera Company, or GOC for short. And we're one of the sort of bigger semi-professional opera companies in kind of the southeast region. We're actually one of only two in Surrey. We've got a fair bit of history. We were founded back in 1971, and we celebrated our 50th anniversary a few years ago. And I think we are quite aware, as a lot of people in the kind of opera and theatre world are, that, opera especially has a reputation as being quite elitist, quite expensive, not particularly accessible some of the time. And so what we're trying to do really, what we sort of always tried to do, but especially now in this kind of, sort of the last kind of couple of years, is kind of enabling people here in Guildford to experience opera without having to kind of go up to London, pay a fortune for tickets and travel, and so it's sort of high quality shows that we aim to produce at affordable prices and in local venues in Guildford that are accessible to people. So I called this presentation "Opera Takes a Village," and you'll learn as the presentation goes on that I quite like a quote. So apologies for anybody who doesn't. So the reason for that really is that it is there is so much that goes into putting on any theatre production, but particularly opera and musical theatre, because there's so many moving parts. And the majority of us are volunteers. I'm a volunteer. I started out working with doing sort of stage management 10 years ago. I was only 16 at the time. And I've sort of stayed with the company. I'm now a trustee. All of our trustees, obviously, by definition, are volunteers. And most of the people, sort of the backbone of the company, really, is our chorus, sort of our members, who also do a lot of kind of the behind the scenes stuff and the voluntary aspects of kind of putting the show together. And our chorus is, non-auditioned, no experience needed. Anyone can join, no need to be able to read music, no experience needed, nothing like that. We're fortunate that we do work with a number of professional musicians as well. And I don't know if does anyone see a little red dot floating around on the screen there if I do that? Perfect. So we've got our conductor there, Lewis, and his orchestra. They've worked with us for about 10 years actually as well. And they're professional musicians working with us on a freelance basis. And then we've got our directors and soloists. And for a kind of small company, and I always like to say this because sometimes people get put off by the kind of the Amdram side of things, think actually maybe the quality is not going to be great. We get some really, really good people working with us. So Valeria here, who's one of our kind of new regular directors, stage directors, that is. She came to us having worked at the Opera House in Verona in Italy, which is one of the most famous ones in the world. She's just done some work with English National Opera as well. And it's a similar kind of case for our soloists as well. So what we actually do, our kind of main sort of part of what we do as a charity, is our productions, obviously. So we do 2 a year at venues in Guildford. So the Electric Theatre, Holy Trinity Church, St Nick's Church. They're fully staged. So you can see here some of this is sort of in a rehearsal break from a production a year or so ago, and we've got people milling around, and we've got costumes and set and lighting and all sorts going on. We tend to do what's known as grand opera, which sounds quite fancy, but really basically it's just to differentiate it from like what we call light opera, which is more like your kind of Gilbert and Sullivan style things, and musical theatre. So it's mostly 19th century classical repertoire. Within that, there's quite a lot of different kind of styles and genres. So you've got, comedies, tragedies, romance, sort of absurdists, more surreal things as well, and lots of different interpretations. So this show here is Aida, which is quite famous. People, you might have heard of that. And it was set originally in ancient Egypt. And Valeria updated it, the interpretation. So the music and everything was all the same, but the staging, she kind of transformed it into like this sci-fi kind of concept, which was pretty cool. Not really what you expect from opera. So it's a bit less fusty than people might kind of expect. This one here I've highlighted because it's really, really important, is that we always sing in English. So always English translations. And as well as that, we also have surtitles. So even though it's being sung in English, we also have English, the lyrics basically being projected above the stage, just so it makes it easier to follow, because it can be quite hard when people are singing and, lots of people singing at the same time, get a bit confusing. So I think that's sort of most of the, in terms of about us. But I'll just share a few kind of pictures and yes, another quote, apologies. No good opera plot can be sensible because people do not sing when they're feeling sensible. And I think this production here, this was November last year, is a good example of that mix of styles. It was a double bill of two short pieces, both about sort of an hour long with a break in the middle, always have an interval. And so we've got this one here on this side, which was more of that was like sort of a romantic tragedy with a love triangle and a duel at the end. And then on the other side, this it's called Pagliacci, which translates as clowns, which is sort of does what it says on the tin. And that was really, really great fun. And then just a couple of quotes. I won't read through kind of word for word, but from our audience members. So people talking about so this one here, very flattering, saying we're doing sort of basically just doing really well with the resources that we have as a small charity. The quality of what we deliver, we think is pretty good, considering kind of that we are mostly just a volunteer led company. And I'll just read this one. It's so this was from a 9-year-old. It was their first opera they'd ever seen. They're very interesting and loud and very dramatic and really fun to watch. And I think that sort of sums up hopefully the experience of coming to one of our shows. Excuse me. And then for the actual volunteering roles, I'll talk in a minute about kind of some of the individual kind of areas that people can work in. But there's it's very, very, very varied, lots of different opportunities. We like to think we're a pretty friendly company, and being volunteer led and amateur company at heart, we try to keep it pretty informal. Chance obviously to support community arts and sort of local development of the local musical offer, and people can use the skills and experience. And I think people come to us sometimes, both performers and people working behind the scenes and backstage, having not used a particular skill for years, and then finally it's that chance to use it, or the chance to learn something new perhaps. And that's very much what it was like for me when I started out volunteering in stage management. Flexibility, we want to aim to be as flexible as possible, and there are the different roles that we have available. There are it's quite a range, from a few evenings a year to there are roles, if somebody wanted to be doing it more like a few hours a week as well. But it's it's all about kind of, we want to keep it on people's terms, so that it's kind of mutually have that kind of mutual agreement, I suppose, as opposed to kind of being too specific, but equally kind of setting out like what kind of like boundaries and stuff there are, because I do a lot of volunteering myself for other places, and I know it can be quite confusing being a volunteer. When people say, "Oh, just do what you want when you want," so we don't really want to do that either. So kind of like striking that balance basically. And then in terms of benefits, you'll be fully included in all of our social events, our after show parties, summer parties. And we've got a complimentary ticket allocation as well, tickets to come and see our shows if you are not sort of performing or actually being backstage in them at the time, which might be the case. Last quote, I promise. Opera happens because a large number of things amazingly fail to go wrong. And it is so true in theatre, and I think especially opera because of all of those moving parts. And these are the roles that we're recruiting for at the moment. And potentially maybe if when I've I'll read through them now quickly, but when I've finished presenting, if anybody's got any questions about particular ones, then very happy to answer them. We've got stage management roles, stage crew, kind of technical behind the scenes, people to help us find and make and look after props and costumes. Then on our publicity team, people to help produce social media content and post social media content. We're looking for a photographer to basically take photos of rehearsals and performances for us to use for publicity. We're looking for a fundraising volunteer. So we've got a little fundraising team, 4 of us, which is what I'm principally involved in with Guildford Opera, as well as the volunteering side. So working with me and a couple of colleagues, and then our front of house volunteers. So welcoming people to the performances, checking tickets, manning the bar, that kind of thing. And the process is quite, hopefully quite straightforward. So application via the VASLA's website, Better Impact. I'll share contact details in a moment if if you've got any questions or you need support to make the application. And then from that point, it's just having a kind of quite informal role discussion with sort of an assigned trustee. So depending on whether you're working more in production or in publicity or in fundraising, that would depend on who you have the conversation with. And then we've got our volunteering agreement and get started, and ongoing support also from that trustee. But I will be myself and the chair of the charity, Pauline, will sort of be making sure that we're the ones essentially making sure that this project goes okay. So we'll always be available, for any volunteers to kind of talk to us as well for any questions about that process. I will. Looking at the time, I'm not going to go through those, but it's just some nice feedback from people about what it's like to to be with us and to be part of the company. Yeah, very happy to take any questions if I have got time, but if not, you've got the contact details just there.